No, seriously, does anybody actually use a tea kettle any longer? And to stand there and say, "Is it boiling yet? Is it boiling yet?" I bring that question up today because I think most people, when they're making something like tea, don't they just go take a little hot water, stick it in the microwave oven, and heat it up, and then throw a tea bag in it and let it go from there? The tea kettle that my mother used to have, I remember one time she thought it was too dry in the house one winter. You want to talk about hillbillies and some of our practices? She thought it was too dry in the house in the winter, so she took a tea kettle and she filled it with water, and then she put the tea kettle down on the heating grate in the middle of the floor. We had a great big heating grate from the furnace down in the basement, and there it would heat up the water in the tea kettle. It wouldn't, steam or boil or anything like that, but it would get really hot. And then it was her view that would then put that water vapor into the air, and then it wouldn't be so dang dry in the house during the course of the winter. And one night coming from the kitchen, I walked through the doorway into the next room, and I kicked the thing, and water spilled all over my left foot. And I ended up with blisters all over my toes. And I went to school, and I said, I can't play gym for a few days. Here's a note from my mom. And our coach, he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean? What'd you do?" And I said, "I scalded my left foot." Then that should have ended there. But then he said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "I kicked a tea kettle." And he stood there for a moment. And then he said, "How did you kick a tea kettle?" "Well, it was on the floor." "Why was it on? Now, he could have been teaching the class and just let it go himself. But he said, how did it get on the floor? Now, he had known my mother since she was a little girl. He'd grown up in the same neighborhood. When I explained it all to him, he went, okay. And that was the end of that. And my toes got better in a few days, and I went back to playing gym. Today, coming out of the bathroom here at work, we have a little kitty that sometimes darts into the building. He lives in the neighborhood. A very nice cat, except if you come out of the bathroom and he's standing in the hall and you're not looking down and you step on him, then he claws and bites. And so same foot, this time, though, a different type of injury. 9 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Look, some of the things we have coming up today. Honestly, I did not look at my planner, but I can tell you off the top of my head, at least in this hour, I know who's going to be along with us. First of all, Bill Kyle, who owns the McDonald's restaurants in this area, franchisee, is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. They're very close, I should note, to opening up the new restaurant that's replacing the old restaurant at Hayburn and Blue Lakes that had been torn down and now has been modernized. He'll be along. We're not talking necessarily about that. We're talking about McCash for Kids, which is a yearly event that his restaurants do that raises money and helps buy school supplies for needy children in the area. And next Monday night, Benito Baeza and I will be, well, not quite sure which location, but we'll be at one of these McDonald's restaurants throughout the Magic Valley, and we'll be there actually inviting you to come out and join us and help raise some money. You can come out, you can dine at McDonald's next Monday night, and a portion of those proceeds will actually go towards helping these kids out. And also coming up a little later this hour, Randy Staple is from Idaho Weekly Briefing. He's got a lot to talk about. Mike Crapo's name being floated by Ann Coulter as a potential VP nominee for Donald Trump. It might be a long shot, but how it got in that mix, it's worthwhile, I think, talking about in the next half hour. In the meantime, if you were like me, no matter where you went over the weekend, and I did not spend a lot of time in front of TV news, I did not spend a lot of time listening to the radio, did not spend maybe nearly as much time on the internet as I usually do during the course of a weekend. I got out, enjoyed the weather on Saturday, and did some things around the neighborhood. Even yesterday morning was nice before the winds came blowing through. But I have to tell you, you cannot escape what's going on with this Black Lives Matter and the current war, it seems, on our law enforcers in this country. I came across a piece this morning at Breitbart. Joel B. Pollack is the writer. Now, he doesn't hint at it. He even mentions it. He said that his rabbi this weekend actually spoke to the congregation about how we need to have more respect for people who defend us on a daily basis in this country and look out for us on a daily basis in this country. So the reason I bring the fact up that he's Jewish is because he is in a marriage where he is married to a black woman, although she is a graduate of Harvard University, and he also says she is a Navy veteran. And he said she is fairly conservative and understands that police are obviously a necessity in this country. And he also mentions one of America's top black writers who often writes about prejudices and violence against blacks in this country, even admits he's never been called a bad word by a white person. So where has all of this lately come from? And this writer actually defends President Obama, unlike people like me last week who said Obama was only throwing kerosene on the fire. He said he thinks Obama was trying to be very thoughtful and balanced with his remarks last week following the shooting deaths of a couple of motorists. Well, one wasn't a motorist. He may have been driving, but he was actually outside a convenience store when he was stopped. That was in Baton Rouge. The other case happened, of course, near Minneapolis, Minnesota. 2 black men dead at the hands of police officers. We have snippets of videotape, which lead a lot of people to believe out there and make conclusions before any evidence is heard, or the whole evidence is heard, that this indeed was just an assault on these black men. Somehow these white cops got up in the morning and said, aha, I have been on the job for 18 years, 2 months, and 14 days, and today is the day I'm going to go out and kill black people. Really, seriously, that doesn't happen. But this writer says it wasn't Obama's remarks last week, but it was his remarks years ago that set all of this up. And he writes this: the Tea Party, which, if you read the book, The Backlash, by the columnist Will Bunch, the Tea Party is actually not founded by Rick Santelli of CNBC, but was founded by a fellow by the name of Bill Colley, who was hosting a radio program in Delaware and actually helped kick off a summer of angry town hall meetings with congressional delegates. The Tea Party got started basically, we'll say 6 years ago, but 7 years ago, if you count that unruly meeting that I happened to be a part of way back in 2009. The writer says the Tea Party arose not because of racism, but because President Obama made clear he was going to push through his agenda regardless of the wishes of the opposition or the constraints of the Constitution, and because voters realized that the Republicans, left to their own devices, were not going to stop him. That's all. That had nothing whatsoever to do with racism. But Mr. Pollack says Obama and his party found it convenient to invent it, like the lies about the N-word being shouted at black legislators in 2010. That was actually while they were passing that weekend Obamacare, and I actually happened to be at the U.S. Capitol that weekend as well. And I can tell you this, even Bill O'Reilly brought in lip readers, and they looked at what was being said to these members of the House of Representatives, and nothing alike was being said, but they all lied because it was convenient to portray the opposition as simply racist. So they have caused this problem. 5 police officers are dead now because they caused this problem. They planted the seeds nearly a decade ago. It's 8:15. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Can I say this to add to that? What's going on in a lot of these parts of the country? I had an interesting email conversation back and forth with a friend over the weekend, and he lives in a rural part of the Northeast. And our conclusion is we're not going to see it happen where we live. You know, it's like the 1960s. When I was a little boy growing up in a small northern Appalachian town in the 1960s, it was all a TV show. We didn't have hippies. We didn't have riots. We didn't have dope. We had none of those things. We had a lot of men walking around in flat-top haircuts, and we called them Dad or Uncle or Mr. So-and-so who lived down the street. We're not going to see it here. And I mean, I can tell you we don't have, and the reason why is we just do not have a large enough population at the moment of any minority groups that are going to go out there and stage large demonstrations that could end up with a clash somewhere. So in that sense, we're among the lucky ones. But if you look at the rest of the country, we are really close to a big meltdown. We have a call with us. Telephone number to reach Top Story today is 736-0300. You're up next. You're on the air.
Well, last week, Bill, when we had the shootings in Minnesota by the officers and then also in Louisiana, and then, of course, Dallas, all I could think about, and you don't know how they would have planned the shootings in Minnesota and Louisiana, but I can feasibly see how they may have found somebody on the edge that would have created a problem, or however it was done, to take our minds away from the travesty of justice of Hillary and Comey and the rest of these filth in D.C. that you can't even begin to trust. And so you see, how is it that this so conveniently happens so we can take our minds off of what happened. And I don't know. I don't know. And you say, how does it occur? I don't know. But, you just get the feeling that we're all being played. And so I don't know, Bill. But, when the decision Comey, the gutless SOB, couldn't do his job after we were told he had some sort of principles, you feel there's such a travesty of justice. You feel, like, is there any chance that we could get any justice out of this deal? And then, of course, this happens in Dallas, and we're just down the road again where we've always been for the last 7.5 years. Thanks, Bill. I'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. The benefit Hillary Clinton got from this, obviously, is it takes the focus off her email scandal and Benghazi and some of these other issues that she's dealing with, and the fact that, as William Safire said, she's a congenital liar. On the other hand, she may have botched the opportunity because she came out and then basically blamed white America for whatever happened and said, y'all better listen and learn here, and this is the way it's going to be. And so, because she doesn't really have a lot of great political skills, not like her husband had, and even whatever he had seems to be failing him anymore. You've got all of these people out there who are trying to, I think, whip up trouble and make it worse. Media loves it because, of course, it's if you're a large newspaper that's suffering and your sales are down, this brings people back to buying your paper. You get their eyes on your website. You get their eyes on the TV news. And yet, a lot of people out there in media also take the Hillary Clinton approach, and that is there's only one side to blame here. This is the police chief from San Antonio, Texas, which close enough to Dallas that he probably knows a lot of people there in law enforcement. His name is Greg Allen. And he was being asked questions about an upcoming demonstration in his city by Black Lives Matter. Listen to his response.
What do you have to say to people who will be protesting out there on Sunday, Black Lives Matters people? What do you have to say to them?
Black Lives Matter, as far as I'm concerned, is a radical hate group. And for that purpose alone, I think the leadership of this country needs to look a little bit harder at that particular group. The consequences of what we saw in Dallas is due to their effort.
Wow. Black Lives Matter is a radical hate group. Did you hear what he said? Now, the sheriff in his county was like, well, hemina. Well, I mean, it could be nice people here, and there could be some bad people there. It'll bad apple everywhere, and hemina. But the police chief of San Antonio came right out and just said it. Radical hate group. And by the way, the beauty of radio is you could listen to Greg Allen there, and you wouldn't know it. But he happens to be a black man. And he's sick of it. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Got more on this subject also coming up in the next half hour. We'll be talking with Bill Kyle from McDonald's Restaurants here in the Magic Valley about a big charitable event coming up, as well as Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing. Could Mike Crapo be the Republican vice presidential nominee? Probably not, but why is his name being floated? Now, the police chief in San Antonio, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, sounding off. His counterpart in Dallas is not taking any guff from anybody among liberals in the media. I want to get to that in just a moment. Saw a lot of him over the weekend, even though, as I say, I was trying not to spend too much time with news media. I do want to mention our friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric this morning because now, we're halfway through summer. We've been talking about all the hot weather, which did vanish yesterday in the winds. But I know it's hard to believe cold winters are right around the corner. And perhaps we're going to see, there was a couple of stories out last week that scientists are saying that we're now headed not for global warming, but for a severe cool down, maybe of a glacial type of event. A subject later on, maybe another day. Whether you need repairs right away or would like to avoid problems in the future, you can call the professionals at Ramsey Heating and Electric today. The team at Ramsey's is going to make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can call them at 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. It's 8:25. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So you get the chief of police from Dallas. He's appearing yesterday on ABC on it's called This Week with Jake Tapper, and his name is Chief Brown. He's been all over television, obviously, the last few days. Probably would prefer that he wasn't. and he was being asked some questions about what happened in his city. And of course, Tapper, carrying the bucket of water for the President of the United States and fellow traveling liberals, immediately moves on to the subject of gun control, looking to see if the chief will endorse confiscation of firearms.
The Obama administration's response to a lot of the violence we've seen in the last week has been to talk about further regulations on gun ownership or gun control. What is your view? Do you think that it's too easy for individuals to get guns in this country?
So, Jake, I wasn't born last night. Let's let the policymakers solve that problem, do their job. I'm a servant. So ask me a question about serving this country, and I'll talk to you for hours. You ask me a policy question that policymakers haven't resolved, I'm going to punt and kick it back to you.
Let's get back to what happened in my city. I'm not here to talk about gun confiscation or gun control or to endorse anything the fellow traveling liberals are doing. You got it? And he made it clear, and Tapper then was like, gee, but you're a black man. You should be a liberal too. Just like the President of the United States.
One of the things that gives me hope this week is actually seeing how the overwhelming majority of Americans have reacted with empathy and understanding. We've seen police continue to reach out to communities that they serve all across the country and show incredible professionalism as they're protecting protesters.
Yeah. Throw a few more bromides out there. You're the cause of the problem, Mr. President. Oh, well, not me. He spent part of the weekend in Spain and then said he had to rush home because, of course, he has to go to the memorial service in Dallas. I can't imagine that he is going to be very popular there. I don't want to talk about historical precedents. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I think it's dangerous. But if he created the conditions that now, that's a problem he created is now what he's going to go provide the solution for. That bothers me a little bit.
The demented individual who carried out those attacks in Dallas, he's no more representative of African Americans than the shooter in Charleston was representative of white Americans.
Well, we didn't say that at the time. And how about a Tea Party? Or if we were at a Tea Party rally and someone started shooting who happened to be white, would we be hearing the same thing, Mr. President?
No.
Yeah. He really sounds sharp there, doesn't he? Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You're up next.
Good morning, Bill. It kind of does my heart good to actually hear the media say the right words. I don't think they understand what they're saying, but it's nice to hear it. The government wants gun control. They don't want gun regulation. They want control over guns. Because if they can control the guns, they can control us. And I agree with the sheriff. I think the Black Lives Matter movement is a hate group. They have said as much that they hate whites. Well, there are white people marching with them, but their announcement is they hate whites. And what was the guy's answer for the shooting? I hate whites, and I'm going to shoot white cops.
Right.
So
fairly
that
obvious.
is a pure definition. That is a pure definition of hate.
I thank you for the call, and all of those people who've been marching over the last couple of years screaming, pigs in a blanket, fry them, fry them. What do you think's going on here? And they get upset if you say, no, all lives matter. They don't care about you. 8:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. On a happier note, going to talk a little McDonald's restaurants in just a few minutes. It's 53.